Hi, this is Team 6 BBA, and we're here to present to you about the Interactive Disaster Relief Dashboard. In the aftermath of natural disasters like Puerto Rico and Houston, we wanted to come up with a tool that would help nonprofits as well as charities respond to disasters effectively. We also wanted to make sure that the tool could be used not only reactively to respond to disasters that have already occurred, but to also deal and plan for disasters that may occur in the future. Let's walk you through a couple of the features that we have built into this dashboard. The first step is to go to the interactive map designed by our team member Tiffany. Using this tool, we can see all the possible disasters that have occurred around the world, as well as historical casualty numbers related to that event. Let's, for example, say that we're interested in studying earthquakes in India. We can first deselect the map, then click on earthquakes. And hovering over India, we can see that the last disaster type of earthquake that was in India affected a total of about 28.5 million people. Using this tool, we hope that it will suggest to the users certain disasters that they should look more into in terms of preparing and making sure that users are able to develop effective contingency reports. Now, let's proceed. Based on the disaster that we selected, let's select an earthquake in India. And let's go ahead and also put in our email address for reporting. And now we can go to the cost calculator. We'll skip over this step for now because we want to talk to you first a little bit about some of the data that we have built into the simulation. Our database goes back to around 1960s and tracks historically the type of disaster as well as the country in which it occurred and the number of people affected. However, this data wasn't as complete as to our liking. We have to do a lot of data cleaning in order to make sure that it was in a usable form. Additionally, we incorporated some information from the World Risk Index, which is a measure of how countries might be hurt by a disaster and what capacity they have to respond to that disaster in order to provide a more holistic understanding of how countries would be able to deal with natural disasters in the future. Now, we want to go a little bit through the cost calculator feature. Based on the information of the type of disaster that we wanted to prepare for previously, an earthquake in India, we run a Monte Carlo simulation using 1,000 trials based on both our historical data relative to the past disasters that have occurred, as well as user-specified parameters. As we can see, through our Monte Carlo simulations, we estimate that a future earthquake would affect an average of around 2 million people, with a standard deviation of about 1 million. To the right, you can also see a histogram that we've generated based on our 1,000 simulations. From this, we can see that the distribution of future simulated disasters is skewed to the right. There's a large number of events that would affect a small amount of people, and there's a correspondingly smaller amount of events that would affect a larger amount of people. Now, let's say that we want to cover the bottom 50% of events, meaning that we want to cover all the events that we have run through our simulation with up to a 50% severity. We store that number in the database, and it tells us that in order to plan for that affected population, we need to prepare for at least 1,713,615 people to be affected by that disaster. Now, since we're dealing with an earthquake, the items that you need across disasters are different depending on the type and severity of the event. Thus, our donation cost calculator automatically generates a list of events that you might need in order to respond to that event. So for Indian earthquakes, it suggests that you might need the following items. Now let's go ahead and select a couple of the items that we want to add in. Great. If we ever make a mistake, we can just hit the reset button and it'll take us back to square one. But now, let's go through a little bit of our item list sheet. Based on the items that we've selected, we can see that the quantities that we've entered have been listed here. Based on some of our own Amazon data, we've also been able to collect some of the weights of the item, the price of the item, the weight per unit of item, the price per unit of item, and a user-defined utility function based on how useful the user thinks the item would be in that situation, based on a scale from 1 to 10. This forms the basic composition of the care package that our users will use in the future. Additionally, we developed a pie chart that would allow for the user to see how exactly space in their box is allocated and thus make sure that they can get a sense of the qualitative composition of their box. Now let's go through a little bit of some of the optimization features. If the user isn't sure about what quantity they should order for the items that they want to put into their box, we decided to develop an optimization tool that would allow the user to do that exactly. We hit the Begin Optimization button, and we're able to select for either the best box possible or the cheapest box possible. Let's say that we want to develop the best box possible. Now we enter our maximum tolerable cost per box, and the simulation will automatically generate an optimizable result based on that. Since we're dealing with so many data points, we can't actually do this in person because it takes too long, but based on this, it will generate an automatic quantity per person and then write that back into the item list sheet. Now, this is our final sheet that we want the user to see. This has all the items that they selected, as well as some of the quantity per person and the total cost of goods. Now, let's say that we want to generate a word report of this in order to send this on to other decision makers. We just hit the Generate a Word Report button, and we just give it a couple of seconds. Here we can see that the Excel function has automatically written all of the items that you listed into the Word document. Now you can use this document to outside stakeholders as well as to decision makers within your organization and have this graph as a reference for the future. We hope that you've enjoyed this presentation of the tool, and we hope to be able to answer any questions that you might have in the future. Thank you.